Do you believe that Jesus was raised from the dead? Well, do you? Well, let's talk about it a minute. The Apostle Paul told us to question ourselves, test ourselves to see if we're in the faith, to ask questions. Think about what we believe. What do we believe about this? What do we believe about the scriptures? Most Christians would say, I believe in the scriptures. But do they? People who ask these questions ask themselves about their faith, about the Bible, what they believe. They're often called Deconstructionists. That's got a pretty bad name. They've really have got a bad name. They're doing what the Apostle Paul said to do, but they get a bad name. They get a bad name from people like John MacArthur and people who believe him. John says that the Deconstructionist, the person who tests themselves to see if they're in the faith, and they find out that they're not in the faith. John makes fun of them. He says, well, they just feel like they've been mistreated. Somebody hurt them. There are too many hypocrites in the church. He's making fun of them for doing what the Apostle Paul said they should do. Shouldn't we all do what the Apostle Paul says? Shouldn't we all test ourselves? For instance, do we believe that Jesus was raised from the dead? Do you really believe? I think that a lot of Christians don't believe. Do you really believe that people come back to life? You've been to funerals. Have you ever seen a person at a funeral dead and a few days later walking around again? Now you may say, well, I don't believe that happens, but I believe that Jesus did. I believe that Jesus did because he was Jesus. Jesus was a person. Do you believe that people come back to life? Or are you a Christian because, just like just about everybody else, you were raised a Christian. You always went to Sunday school, and I mean, when you get out, you do whatever, in general, most of us do. We get out on the interstate and the speed limit is 70 and we're doing 80. And if we get pulled over, we're pretty upset about it because we ought to be able to do 80. We ought to be able to break the law. We ought to be able to do all kinds of things. And we do all kinds of things. Why is that? Why do we do that without even feeling any remorse at all? We're Christians. When I went from not believing that Jesus came back to life, I didn't believe it. I went from that to 100% believing that he did come back. I believed that a person came back to life, that people really do come back to life. It changed my life. I've been a different person. I don't get out on the interstate and do 80 and think that that's okay to break the law, because I don't think it's really breaking law because everybody else is doing it. I don't do this. Question your faith. Do what the Apostle Paul said. Don't tell people you're a deconstructionist if you don't want to. Question your faith, though. Question yourself. Test yourself to see if you're in the faith. Test yourself, like the scripture says, to see if you believe. Scripture says in Romans 10:9, it says, if you believe that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. When it says in John 3:16, if you believe in Jesus, that's what it's talking about. If you believe that people come back to life, then you can be saved. But if you don't believe that, you might not be.